This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joire.
Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joire, and today is Friday, December 15th, 2017. Net neutrality is officially dead. Wah, wah, wah. So we'll talk about this. My guest today is David Imel.
Yeah.
Oh,
however you want to say it, it's
good.
Fine. It's okay.
So you're with Android Authority.
Yes.
If people don't know who you are, what do you do there?
I am a producer / writer /
do everything.
I came in kind of doing everything, but recently I've been delving a lot more into video, helping Josh and Juan do video and that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I always see you with a lot of camera gear, so I figure that's probably why.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, anyway, what are the news of the week? Net neutrality. So how? I mean, you're probably pissed by that. I'm kind of pissed. I mean, I knew it was coming.
Right.
You know, this government's been all about this. My biggest concern, honestly, is not so much like I do believe that we could, without Title II, continue somewhat okay.
Yeah.
There might be some checks and balances with FTC here.
Right.
But with this present regime, I'm a little concerned that none of this is going to happen. We're all going to get screwed. But I'm actually more concerned about a bigger problem. And maybe it's just my paranoia of being an old person who's seen a lot of the world. It's that I'm worried this is going to be used to enforce propaganda, basically.
Yeah.
Like, we don't like what you say on your website. We're cutting you off.
Right.
And not cutting you off as a government, as a government. But we're going to get all the ISPs that are in bed with us to shut down access to your website.
Well, before the vote, there was already so much propaganda by Comcast and a bunch of other ISPs on Twitter and just all around the internet, saying this is why Title II needs to die. It's good for competition. And it's no. And it's there's just all this propaganda that was already circulating. And it's kind of it's a scary thought that now that it's actually dead, where's that going to go from here? You know, and I think that I live in San Francisco, and I think that I'm lucky that I live in San Francisco because we have a ton of ISPs there. And, so you have a lot of choices when it comes to who you want to use. So if anyone starts to throttle you or anyone you can kind of tell that they're trying to add slow lanes to your content, you could always just switch over. But there's so much of, especially the Midwest and some of the East Coast, that only has one option, and that's Comcast or some other huge provider, like Time Warner or something like that.
Yeah, I'm a little worried because, I live in San Francisco too. Just so you know, by the way, we're in New York City today.
Yeah.
Both of us, which is kind of ironic because we lived in San Francisco, and we're in the same room, which is kind of cool, recording in person like that. But I wanted to point out that you're right that we have more choices than average in San Francisco, but that's actually not the case with everyone in San Francisco.
Yeah, that's true.
I live in Potrero Hill, right, which is one of the pretty affluent, I guess, today neighborhood. It wasn't always, but a lot of the tech execs who work in the South Bay decide to get their houses there because it's close to the freeway, close to the airport, and it's a hill and it's got nice weather. So you'd think we'd have a lot of choice, but the reality is we don't. It really depends, right? Again, it's very much what income bracket are you in.
Yeah. If
you are the average person, the only choices you really have that are any kind of affordable are Wave broadband, which I have.
Which that's over microwave, right?
No. Wave is actually a regular cable provider.
Oh, okay.
They're based out of Seattle originally. And then there is, of course, the ubiquitous Comcast.
Yep.
And then AT&T, I believe, has DSL service. And who wants DSL?
No.
Right? So, again, DSL is more affordable. So then you're aiming at a price point for people who are on a budget.
Right.
So that eliminates for them Comcast and Wave. For me, Comcast, no way. I would never spend my money on them.
Yeah,
so the only alternative I have left is Wave. And Wave, actually, as a kind of a grandfather person, because before that, it was called Axion Internet. And before that, it was called RCN. And so it was small ISP bought by medium-sized ISP bought by large ISP. And, and I'm seeing exactly the result. Yeah. Even though I've been with them for almost 15 years now, over this evolution of their acquisitions, my service has gone down in quality and my customer service has gone down in quality. Yeah. And thankfully I have a business account so I can call them at 3 a.m. and bitch if something doesn't work. Yeah. But that's the issue, right? And you're going to say, well, what are the other options? Well, there's one more. But I can't get it.
Is it
so what is it?
Sonic?
No, it's
Google Fiber.
It's what's it called?
The distributed.
Monkey Brains.
Oh, Monkey Brains. Yeah.
They're the
You need
wireless
special hardware.
ISP. Yeah. So the problem is I'm a renter. And
Okay.
they need to mount a mast on my roof. And I could get my landlord to agree to it. But in typical San Francisco fashion, I have an absentee landlord who doesn't care about anything. And the chance of him agreeing for me to put a mast on his roof is almost nil. But Monkey Brains would be the independent ISP that I would choose because they're awesome. And they provide symmetric internet if you want it, which is what I really need. As you know, you upload videos all the time. You know how much of a pain that is.
Have you heard of Sonic at all?
I have, but it's not available in my area.
It's not there yet, yeah.
And then, if you live in some of the new developments in Soma, you can get fiber really cheap. My house in Portland, I have fiber through CenturyLink. Terrible company, but it's the fastest internet I can get. And it's gigabit. Like I get 1,000 down, 500 up for really cheap. But in typical fashion, to get the good deal, you have to sign up for 2 years and you have to sacrifice your firstborn. Thankfully, I have no children. So of course I'm paying more, cause I didn't give one to them, to the gods of, no, but look, that's the problem. And again, I have the choice of Comcast in Portland, but why would I do that? Then AT&T DSL again, right? It turns out the crazy thing is my neighborhood in Portland has been completely redone in fiber. So even if you get plain old telephone service over copper,
you still get internet.
You're getting actually fiber to your house to a box that they then convert to POTS. So you're getting fiber no matter what. If you get this, if you get DSL from AT&T, you get fiber to your house, POTS, ADSL over POTS. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
AT&T does not provide fiber service, even though they have to install.
It's already there.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's insane. And it's an older neighborhood. It just got redone at one point.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of America is in that boat, right? They actually could get fiber, but they're priced out of it.
Right,
I can't afford spending $100 a month for gigabit. And, it's going up, I think, next year because the first year they're like, you're going to love it. We're going to give you a good deal. And then it's going to be like $130 the next year every month.
Yeah.
And I don't get TV. For me, it's just cable. Right? But the thing is, people who don't have $100 a month to spend, what do? Right? Like they go for ADSL over freaking POTS over fiber.
Yeah, because the average person doesn't really.
Anyway,
look at
this
the
is
speed.
not a rant about ISPs, but I think with yesterday's ruling, we need to bring it up.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, it's kind of scary, because there's a lot of smaller ISPs that they can't grow now. It's like they're getting less power, and Comcast and a lot of other ISPs are trying to shut them down.
Well, I mean, what is Monkey Brains going to do, right? I mean, they're staying competitive right now because they have the edge on wireless. If you can get it, if you can get it installed on your home, I think Monkey Brains in most of San Francisco, if you have line of sight of their tower, they're not towers because they're really a mesh network. Of the next node, you're good.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of ifs. And for most people, that's not practical.
Yeah.
The average person who goes to Monkey Brain's website, they make it really easy to understand, but it's still very technical. Like they go oh, you have to install a post. It sounds like DirecTV. I don't want to deal with it.
And a lot of people have landlords and they don't want to ask them, or they don't think that they're actually going to.
I mean, as I said, I'm willing to ask. I can almost guarantee you the answer will be either completely ignored, number one, most likely answer.
Yeah.
Second answer will be no. So, ISPs, net neutrality. So keep an eye on what's going on, folks, right? I mean, right now, we need to stay vigilant and continue telling your representative. I posted a link on the podcast I did 2 weeks ago with Shannon Morse on the podcast notes on how to contact your Congress people through a simple form on the EFF website.
Yeah.
One click, you can send stuff to everyone. Keep doing this on a regular basis. And, there's some lawsuits that are starting. The states are suing FCC right now. Yep. The Congress still has final say, so potentially, hopefully, something will happen. But based on...
There just needs to be a simple majority in Congress.
Based on the recent tax laws passing, I have a slim feeling of hope there. But look, it's not all over. This is why we have democracy. Vote, go out there, let your, Let your voice known, because this is what it's about. If you just say, whatever, I can't do anything about this. This is probably one of the most fundamental things we have. Access to free information, not free for free, like $0, but free flow of information and non-censorship is critical for us. Like the only thing that makes it possible right now for us to fight this stupid government we have is to be able to have dissent and have that voice heard and that voice communicated. If you're worried about, the government spying on you, listening to you, whatever, install Signal on your phone, right? Like, just take some simple steps to protect your privacy, and please don't bury your head in the sand and say, I don't want to be political, because you know what? The fact that you live in this country right now is just a political statement. You have to be political. It's impossible otherwise. So, now that we've bored you to death, we're going to talk about T-Mobile in a second, because it's kind of an ISP-related thing, but I want to tack it on to the end because I want to get you guys into the juicy meat of the podcast. Ooh, the juicy meat. So David and I play with a lot of phones, and so let's talk about them. What are your kind of on your desk, on your pockets, in your bag, kind of on your person phones right now?
So we just finished doing a thing we do every year called Best of Android. And it's kind of this it's not a competition, but it's a thing where we take like kind of the top phone from every brand, and we had 10 this year, I think.
Wow.
So there's a lot of new phone brands out there. We had the Razer phone in it, So, and we do a bunch of objective testing on it. This is the first year that we did like some pretty hardcore objective testing. So we have all this like imaging software and like all this different stuff. So I've spent a little bit of time with Narav, and then Chris Thomas is our head of testing, just kind of like helping them do testing on these phones. And surprisingly, the Huawei Mate 10 Pro came out on top, which I'm actually not really that surprised. I think it's
like overall what people prefer.
Overall on top, it's just through objective numbers, and then we also have a slight amount of like subjective stuff.
So by how much did it get over, say, probably the next best one, which would probably be the Pixel 2 XL?
Actually, I think overall the 2 XL got 6th place, which was pretty crazy.
So what was your number 2 on that list?
I'm trying to remember. I think it was the 5T.
Okay. Yeah. So is this, by the way, available on your website? I'll put it in the show notes. Okay, I'll go dig it out. It's a top 10 on Android Authority.
It's called Best of Android 2017.
Ooh. So I'll look for that in the show notes, guys. So, okay, what's your number 3 in that list?
I can't.
We can look it up.
Remember specifically.
But ultimately, it's like, I think I want to talk about the Mate 10 Pro because, I talked about it a little bit on the show last week with Iliana of Ubergizmo. You were there too. We were at the Qualcomm event in Maui, and now we're in New York. We both travel a lot. Welcome to our world. But basically, it's it's a great phone. I'm really liking it. I've had it for 2 weeks. I took it on this trip to Hawaii for all my kind of like photography needs. Of course, I still had other phones. We all carry like 3 or 4 phones at least. I always have more than that. But I like it a lot. Like, it's really good. The only thing that still vexes me, and it's the same with the Pixel 2 XL, it's the lack of headphone jack.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's a solid phone. Like, the camera is really good. Like, I don't think it's Pixel 2 XL good. No. But it gives you manual modes, which you don't get, and RAW, which you don't get.
What I really like is the monochrome sensor in this phone, and because I'm a Fujifilm shooter, and so Fujifilm and that kind of the people that shoot with Fujifilm are very into black and white stuff, and Huawei has that monochrome sensor, so you can get some really inky blacks out of that camera. The colors are good too, but I think the monochrome sensor, especially that's partnered with Leica on those lenses, is like kind of top tier in that sense.
I agree. I think if you want to be creative, this is a phone to get.
Yeah.
I agree with you. For me, for creative photography, if you want to play with RAW later on, or if you want to have a really good tweaking of settings session where you're like experimenting, having fun with depth of field and whatever. F1.6, that's the thing a lot of people are missing, is like V30 is the only other phone of F1.6 manual controls.
And there was a huge controversy over that.
And I'm sure that it's up in your top as well, because to me that's probably my second or third in that. To me, like, they're all really good. But if I look at imaging, which is my primary interest, frankly, it's going to be between the V30 Pixel 2 XL and the Mate 10 Pro in terms of photography. And for me, what makes the V30 so good is that f of 1.6, the fact that it has a manual mode, great video modes for video, but more importantly, the wide angle, the ultra wide angle, which is really great. Yeah. But if you're not needing that, the Mate brings out the monochrome, as you said, and the monochrome is really, really cool, right? So that is kind of where I want to be for photography is creative stuff. There it is. So what is number 3?
So
then?
this is it's a week-long thing where we do.
So
we do
every
camera,
week.
we do performance. So Monday through Friday, basically, and then today at the end of the day we're gonna review the list.
So this is imaging today.
This is specifically camera. We test a lot of stuff.
So in the list we were going through earlier, you said was that overall? Like, so one was made.
That was overall, and Mate 10 won overall. It wasn't for camera.
Okay.
So let me see which ones. Okay, so we got the Note 8 had the best camera.
Okay.
From all the objective testing. Second was Mate 10 Pro, so it was close.
For camera.
It was very close. And then 2XL actually got third.
Interesting that 2XL came third. I'm surprised the Note 8 is number 1. I mean, I think it's a solid camera. And I think the 2x manual, like not manual, but optical zoom on it is solid. But it doesn't strike me as so that's outstanding to me. Like,
that's why these were completely objective. So we tested noise in low light.
Oh yeah, so this is not your
color error.
This is not your eyes.
No,
got it.
It's not subjective.
So what about the subjective part? When
we have a separate article that we wrote that's like it's more of a traditional. We're going to take photos with all these phones, which is best to your eye,
So what do you think? Your opinion.
So
what's your favorite there?
For run and gun, I think the 2XL is really hard to beat.
Yeah, if you just want to mash away at the button, that's it.
We went when we were in Maui last week. Me and Michael Fisher and Joshua Vergara and David Kogan and Safwan. We all went to the top of this it's called Twin Falls.
Twin Falls, yeah.
Yeah, so it's along this road to Hana.
Yeah, it's great. I've been there.
And all we had was a bunch of Pixel 2 XLs and one V30 for the wide angle. So when we wanted to get big group selfies, the V30 was like where it's at, right?
Totally.
But the quality was just not nearly as good. And especially the Pixel 2 XL has insane quality even with the front camera.
Yeah,
that's one thing that I think that a lot of other kind of OEMs they're getting more used to and they're kind of pushing towards, but they have not hit the level of quality that you can get with a 2XL front camera.
I honestly don't even think the iPhones are as good, and that's the thing that a lot of people I don't think get it. Like, I mean, they're all good. Like, you take a Note 8, objectively, potentially, at least on your test, the best. And I would agree to that. I mean, they're all so close objectively, right? If you measure noise and all that. But, I mean, you're not going to get any bad pictures out of a Note 8, I think, these days.
Yeah, it's probably not going to look as good as a Pixel 2 XL, but that's just because all their post-processing.
But that's the thing. It's all that other stuff, the software photography, computational photography aspects.
It's all computational.
And I think that's what makes also, like, going back to the Note 10, the Mate 10, a little bit, and again, I haven't tested the regular Mate 10, but I assume it's the same.
It's the same camera.
Yeah. So, to me, what makes the Mate 10 Pro camera so great is, just like the V30, you get that creative aspect with the black and white. On the V30, it's the wide angle.
Right.
But in the main camera, they're both 1.6. They both have manual controls. They both have RAW. Yeah. And they both have their strengths and weaknesses. And I think Leica's tuning really shines.
Oh, yeah.
I think the sensor is a slightly better sensor on the Mate, but LG's processing on that, kind of smallish sensor, one micron, 1 point whatever one it is actually superb. Like, it's really, you can tell they've honed it for years. Yeah.
Especially the video functionality they have on that.
But the Mate 10 adds a little bit of computational photography, their own kind of recipe around it. I think it's a lot of brouhaha, like, I think in a way, because look, I don't think Huawei has Google's chops when it comes to, machine learning
Yeah,
and
no.
neural networks
Yeah.
and AI. I'm not saying they don't have the technical know-how. They totally do.
They just don't have all the.
They don't have the data
Yeah,
sets,
the data.
right?
Yeah.
Unless they have access to Baidu's image database somehow, and we don't know that. Then I would see that being a pretty huge database of photos. But I think Google is very iterative. I think I read somewhere, and I'm not sure this can be, maybe we can verify this by asking Google, but I hear that when they push out updates for the Pixel 2 XL, they update some of the, basically the machine learning, black box that they, the latest recipe basically based on all the new images that have come in on all the, and remember, it's not just public images.
Yeah.
It's anything you put in Google Photos. Don't be delusioned that your photos, when they go to Google Photos, are just your photos. I mean, look, it's okay.
It's computers looking at them.
I know
not
this.
people.
It's not people,
Yeah.
But computers are looking at every photo you upload to, and it iterates on that and improves on that, right? And I think that's what I'm excited about. I think that's disruptive. That's what Google brings to the Pixel 2 XL. And that's why the Pixel 2 XL subjectively, I mean, the sensor and the lens on the Pixel 2 XL are not that amazing. 1.8 is pretty par of the course for the course these days. The sensor has big pixels, that helps. But, other than that.
I mean, it shows because, when you have a sensor that small, you need it to have the lowest f-stop possible.
Yeah.
Right? You need to have, and so that's why the Mate 10 and the V30 are so exceptional with their f1.6. Because when you've got a sensor that's like, the size of your
pinky at best.
Yeah, at best. At best. You can only let in so much light.
And with pinky fingernail, just so you know, just to be clear, or like the
finger,
nail on your pinky.
Yeah.
That's a big sensor on the camera will actually. Yeah. I mean, on the phone will.
So that really shows like how much computational photography that Google has in this phone. It's the processing. It must be a lot because you take the photo, it doesn't look great, but then you wait 2 seconds and all of a sudden it looks amazing.
You can really see the improvement. I mean, it's not bad usually, but it's just like you don't really have time to look at it to figure out how bad it is until you get the better version. What I'm finding interesting though is on all these phones lately, most of the ones I've used extensively have been V30, Note 8, S8 as well, but it's the same camera. For the main camera, and then the Pixel 2 XL, then the Mate Pro a little bit on this trip. I feel that a lot of them are slightly underexposed, and so I end up bumping. I use Google Photos a lot for like quick adjustments.
Yeah.
And I try to use Google Photos consistently on all the phones because I know how the settings work. I'm familiar with what it's going to do.
Yeah.
And I know which sliders to play with to have something that subjectively pleases me. And I find that I end up usually bumping shadows a little bit and sometimes bumping, what's the other one? Highlights.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed about the 2XL and the 2 is that they have a lot of dynamic range, but it tends to be on the darker side.
Yeah, and I think they err on the side of, and the Note 10, the Mate 10 does the same.
Yeah.
I've noticed it errs on the side of slightly underexposing. I think that's because, a lot of people are going to tweak things, and then you get a little bit more to play with if you want to increase brightness.
Well, it's better to have a darker image than lose the information.
Exactly. So I think that's kind of cool to me that they're doing that. I think, I'm going to get an iPhone 10 soon. I'm going to pick one up when the next time I'm up in Portland. Finally, I've decided to bite the bullet, and I'm going to see how that works out. And I'm also going to use Google Photos on it to do my tweaking, just so I have the consistent experience. We'll see if it's underexposed or not.
I've used it a bit. It definitely doesn't underexpose as much as the Android cameras do, but I don't really like the quality of the photos as much. I feel like
it's subjectively, what is it specifically that's bugging you?
It might be the colors. It seems like they're a little more
muted?
dulled out. Yeah, muted.
It's funny you mentioned that because one of the things I love about all the Huawei high-end phones that have come out since the P9, and it's something you don't have on the Honors that use the same camera systems. For example, the Honor 8 was using the P9 camera system. There's a Honor View 10 or V10 that's coming up soon that seems to be, and we don't know because it's Huawei. They don't seem to be able to tell us exactly, and we'll figure it out, Drones. That's what we're here for. But it looks like it's a Mate 10 Pro Redux.
Yeah,
but I don't think I might have removed OIS, which is kind of like, oh,
and
why?
It doesn't have the
Oh yeah, it
sensor
doesn't
either.
have the like. Oh, it doesn't have the sensor. It's a
doesn't,
different
yeah.
sensor.
I was hoping it was going to be the same one, but I was reading and it seems like it's a different one. So.
I thought at least on the Honor 8 was exactly the same optics and lenses and sensor. And remember, the P9 did not have OIS, so it didn't have OIS, so it was pretty much on par.
Yeah.
But of course, it didn't have the Leica processing.
Yeah.
Number one, that's software.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing it didn't have is the monochrome mode.
Yeah.
As of pure, like, why? Like, they had a monochrome sensor, but the monochrome mode they gave you was taking the color picture and desaturate. I was like, are you kidding me?
They've got to differentiate their product line.
But the point is that Leica, the Leica branding is not just a brand here, guys. It's I think it's solid. I think you can see it.
Very solid.
The reason we're in New York is last night was Huawei's holiday party, Huawei USA Mobile, whatever you want to call it. And it was coinciding with the opening of a gallery they have here in Chelsea that shows off some photos taken with various Huawei and Honor phones by some pretty interesting and clever folks. And I mean, they're photographers, most of them, so they come from a kind of a traditional photography background. Most of these photos have been shot in manual mode and RAW and tweaked, of course, on a computer. But I was really amazed because they were blown up the size of a 40-inch TV.
They were big.
And the Mate 10 Pro photos, which was the majority of them, looked phenomenal, blown up.
For the size,
and I noticed that some of them had noise in them, which you'd expect, but that noise looked like analog like photo grain. Yeah. And I think that's Leica's processing there. Mm-hmm. And because, you can tweak how the noise looks on it. You're going to have noise. Right. So why not make it look right?
Make it look like film grain.
And that's one of the things that I think that you get from this partnership with Leica.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to getting the View 10 Pro because I want to see how much of a redux we get.
Right.
I think you're right. I'm definitely sure we're not going to get the OIS. But I'm surprised they would use another sensor because I don't know economies if it was another of scale.
Sensor. Yeah. We'll see.
But we'll see, and hopefully it's half decent. It's going to be half the price. I mean, the Mate 10 Pro is a €799 phone. Yeah. Can't get in the US, and we're talking $1,000. I wouldn't pay for that. Thanks Huawei for reviewing it, right? Yeah. But I mean, the View 10 I think is one that's going to probably come to the US, and if that's $500, then you're playing in the same leagues as the OnePlus 5T, which, as we know, imaging wise is a little, it has issues. It's gotten a little better. The last update, I think, improves things a little bit.
Got better, yeah.
But honestly, it's still iffy. So, speaking of which, as a segue, Honor 7X, I'm actually pretty impressed with the camera on that thing. I did not expect much because the 6X last year was okay. We took a generic mainstream, a parts bin, Huawei camera, put it on a phone, and then we added a tiny little 2 megapixel so we can get some parallax, so we can go. We have portrait mode, right? Yep. And at first, at face value, when they read the specs on this new camera, I was like, oh, it's the same thing. They took a generic off the mill sensor and they put their little 2 megapixel. And now they have portrait mode. Woohoo! Boring. Yeah. And then I started taking photos with it in Hawaii, and I was like, wait a minute. Yeah. This is way better than I expect. No, it's not in the same league of all these other phones we were talking about. I would say it's probably in the same league as the OnePlus 5T, actually, which, if you think about it for a second, you're like, wait, that's $300 less money. Yeah. Yes, you don't get a Snapdragon 835. Yes, you don't get all that
stuff. Does it really matter anymore?
But I don't think that's my point. The reason I'm comparing these two is, you lose NFC. You get a mid-range processor, not the same amount of RAM. There's no doubt performance-wise you're taking a step down. Sure. But the display doesn't look, it's a little washed out, but it doesn't look much worse. Yeah. And you get that beautiful 18:9 full screen. I mean, you put them side by side, they almost look identical anyway.
Yeah. I think it's a good move for Honor to try to get into the really low-end market, but still have good hardware.
Yeah, and it's all metal, and it's well made. And honestly, performance-wise, everyday use, I haven't noticed any difference. I haven't played games on it. I'm sure that's going to be the killer difference. But the camera, though, because the 5Ts is so meh for its flagship-ish, aspirations, and because the 2X the 7X, I was expecting so much just dullness out of it, I was like, wow.
Well, something that bummed me out about the 5T was that they switched from the 1.6x zoom to just a 1x zoom 20 megapixel camera.
I agree. And it's weird because in some ways it's better. In some ways it's like worse, I can't put my finger on it.
Well, the fact that the camera ended up not being so they said they did that because they wanted to make it better in low light, but then we tested it in low light and it was really bad.
Yeah, but that's the thing. See, the thing is, I'm trying to put my finger on exactly what they're doing with that secondary camera, and I've noticed not with the latest updates, but the previous to latest update, that they did add some functionality that's not just for extreme low light. Like originally they said it's for extreme low light, and nobody cares because 10 lux, you're never going to achieve that.
Yeah.
And then yes, I noticed it does make a difference in super low light, but it's already so bad that you don't want to keep the photo anyway.
You don't want to do that anyway. Yeah.
But of course, then it's also that large sensor is also used for the what they claim to be lossless 2x zoom, which, by the way, the Mate 10 and the Mate 9 and the P10 and P10 Plus, all these, the Mate 10 Pro, they have that functionality because it's not just the 16, is it 16 or 12, the main? It's 12, right?
I think it's 12.
The 12 main, and then you have a 20 monochrome. So the monochrome one, by the way, I now have it officially from Steve at Huawei. I don't know his last name. He's one of the execs there. I have it on official record, that the monochrome camera on all these phones never had OIS. So the OIS on the P10, P10 Plus, Mate 9, Mate 10, Mate 10 Pro, and Mate 9 Pro, if you have one of those rare beasts, is actually only on the color lens. So interesting. And so that 20 megapixel shot, not only do they get a light data out of it to improve the dynamic range of the color sensor for color photos. And that's also why you don't get a lot of the image enhancements when you're in monochrome mode. You lose OIS when you're in monochrome mode. You lose the ability to zoom properly. Because in color mode, they also use that big sensor for zooming. So they get a little bit, like they do some computational photography to get a better, basically what they call a lossless zoom.
Right.
But, then again, so did Nokia did that with PureView.
Yep.
With the 20 megapixel sensor, you could zoom 2 times with pretty much no loss because they did pixel binning and a bunch of clever stuff. So this is not new. And OnePlus is attempting to do that with...
That's the reason they said that they did that.
Yeah. Is their secondary sensor 20? It is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're doing kind of so... Basically, they're trying to replicate the optical zoom from the 5 with this computational zoom that Huawei and Nokia have been doing.
Yeah.
But they don't have the know-how to pull it off.
Yeah, they haven't been able to do it, definitely.
So it's like, look, I don't want to bash on OnePlus because I love OnePlus. I mean, for $500, it's one compelling phone.
Yeah.
You still get a headphone jack too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the other thing. The 7X, the Honor 7X, you still get a headphone jack. And the View V10, when we get it, you'll get a headphone jack.
Well, something I wanted to talk about that I think not a lot of people have kind of discussed is that the Mate 10 and the Mate 10 Pro are almost... I almost feel like they should be called Mate 10A and Mate 10B. Because with the Mate 10, you get the headphone jack. You get a higher resolution display.
Yeah, and it's different aspect ratio though, so it's pretty wide phone.
Yeah, it's
IPS.
It's IPS if you want to wide road. But
and micro SD.
And micro SD expansion, which I think is what a lot of pros want. They want the headphone jack. They want micro SD. And then the Pro has a lower resolution display, but I mean it's taller, so there's that. It's waterproof.
Yeah.
But is that all it has?
Basically,
going for it?
The advantages of the Pro to me are waterproof, narrower phone in your hands with that aspect ratio 18:9.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Yeah,
because you lose micro SD, you lose the headphone jack, and you lose the resolution.
In my opinion, the regular.
There's another advantage. AMOLED. I prefer AMOLED. I always have.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
a lot of people think I'm crazy, but look, IPS is great, but to me, it's this constant. Yes, AMOLEDs are imperfect. In fact, the Mate 10 Pro I have, if you look at in very dim light with a consistent gray background, you see some defects, you see blotches, it's always going to be a problem.
It's okay.
Well, man, unless you're called Samsung, it's always going to be a problem. But I don't care because honestly, it's not. I'm never looking at my phone in these conditions. Yeah. First of all, secondly, the what I do care about on IPS that drives me nuts is viewing angle problems. Even though they make IPS displays with great viewing angles, all the coatings for outdoor visibility and stuff, make them so that they get weird.
Get a weird angle.
And then the AMOLEDs get slightly blue, but I don't care. Because again, you can still really see some good contrast. And yes, I don't look at my screens at odd angles, but when I'm sharing a video with a friend in there, next to me, it's kind of nice. But the IPS, the biggest problem I have with IPS is unless you have a manufacturer who really cares, you get all this light bleed all the time, everywhere. On the edges, you always see something when you're like reading at night.
Right.
Oh man, it drives me
AMOLED
nuts.
is amazing for that. Is amazing for that. I use Reddit all the time in bed at nighttime on my 2XL. And it's just nice being able to just illuminate those pixels that I need, you know?
I know.
They have an AMOLED mode. So.
It's just funny because to me it's like they both have their strengths, and I'm not gonna bet mad at anyone who says I prefer IPS. I get it. Like, but to me, it's like I'd rather honestly. It's also kind of philosophical. As an engineer, the concept of you only turn on the pixels you need just makes way more sense to me than having a polarizer, backlight, and all this thickness you add. It makes for just more power efficient phones, more slimmer, thinner phones. I don't know. It's just the future. Look, the reality is 10 years from now, we'll look back. Everything we have will have AMOLED, and we'll be like, what? LCD? What are you talking about?
Right.
Like Jurassic Park here? You know?
I just feel like a lot of people want their headphone jack and they want like storage expansion space, you know? And so it's almost like, to me, the regular Mate 10 is almost the Pro version.
So that was one of the questions. So just so you know, like the reason I brought this guy, Steve, I wish I had his last name, but I'll look it up. But his name was Steve. He works at Huawei, and they set up a briefing with me on the phone to check in on you've had the Mate 10 Pro for 2 weeks. What do you think? Do you have any questions? I was like, oh, you're asking for pain. Because anybody who ever calls me and says, I want your feedback, oh yeah, I get paid for giving feedback. That's my consulting business. So of course I'm not going to charge them because they're doing me a favor by sending me devices, and as a journalist I need their support. But at the same time, I'm not gonna hold any punches, right? So I basically said, you suck for removing the headphone jack. You suck for not having a dedicated HDR mode. Having an auto HDR mode. So it turns out I'm wrong. And I want to correct this from previous podcasts. Okay. So I'm wrong on two things. Two things I was able to get a nailed down answer from Huawei. Okay. For the record, no OIS on the monochrome. For sure on the Mate 10. And it sounds like on even the previous ones where we thought there was dual OIS, that was not the case.
Interesting.
Second thing is, starting with the Mate 10 and maybe some software updates on the P10 and P10 Plus, auto HDR is actually a thing. It's not anywhere, but when you take a phone in auto mode, it does auto HDR. That computational AI, NPU,
the layering or whatever,
marketing speak, that is actually part of it. And I tested it. Just I really tried. Like I did the Pixel 2 with the HDR turned off, facing a window with somebody in the backlight. Yeah, it looked bad. I turned on HDR Plus, magic, right? And then I did the same on the Mate. I was like, I forced HDR, which is one of the modes, and it worked great. Then I did no settings, and exactly the same picture. Okay. So I know for a fact it's happening. And then I went on to the 7X, the Honor, because if I dock two things on the Honor that I would say do not buy it, it's no NFC. Right? It was just ridiculous.
Yeah. It's such a small thing.
And no auto HDR. But it does it too.
Oh, interesting.
So I think Huawei and Honor are doing their thing by not having a defeatable HDR, basically. Yeah. You can force HDR in the settings, like there's always one mode that's HDR, and then you can't turn it off. But who would want to turn it off these days?
I know. Yeah, it's fast enough, right?
There was a time when I would disable auto HDR on all my phones.
It took so long.
But now I'm like, I always leave it on because it makes such a difference because it's done right now. Yeah. And HDR in the old days always looked like like it just looked wrong. It looked like something like you gave Photoshop to a child and let them play for 5 minutes, and then you got a mess. Now that's no longer the case. So those are the two things, the two outcomes from these and it's exciting to me because it means that we have a phone. We now have phones from Huawei that do something I thought they didn't do, which is great. But that doesn't excuse the last for headphone jack. And And I asked the guy, I see this, like, look, I don't understand, it's like you, I don't understand these two products. Like, they complement, but they don't.
Yeah.
And you buy one, you get the short end of the stick, and you buy the other one, you get the short end of the stick. So what were you thinking? Yeah. Well, we wanted to offer choice. And we felt that, from our user feedback, these are the choices we want. The Mate 10 is the cheaper product. It is more affordable. It's more accessible. We felt that it needed a headphone jack.
So why did the Pro not need a headphone jack?
Because
to differentiate the
because again, we feel that he actually said we feel that's high-end phones, that's where they're headed.
Well, yeah, they are, but it sucks.
But we don't like it.
No one likes that.
And I said that. I said all our readers and listeners, and I'm not just talking me. I told them all of the journalists that I know in the tech world, that will cover photography and mobile and all that, are all adamant.
I don't know
we don't want
one person at all, not just journalists, anyone that likes the fact that they removed the headphone jack.
So I told them that. I said, take that feedback. I said, look, Samsung and LG for now haven't done it. Take a cue from them. They're totally eating you alive on the market in the US right now. Yeah. If you want to really be popular in the US, this would be a really popular thing to do. Yeah. Keep that headphone jack for as long as you can.
Yeah. There's a reason Samsung and LG
especially I said to them, you're selling to niche here. People don't go to Best Buy to buy an Honor 7X. Yeah. Right? Like, they're going to go to a carrier store and buy a Moto Z2 Play or a Moto X4 in that price range. And because the clerk said this is what you get at that price point, and they're not going to pay for it up front. They're going to roll it into their installment plan somehow.
You pay $5 a month.
So they don't care it's $200 or $500 because over 2 years it's going to be the difference between a quarter of a latte a day. Yeah. And I'm using the pricing of San Francisco lattes just to be that's like an ongoing thing.
I use coffee to price things.
Yeah, exactly. That's an ongoing thing on the podcast. People ask me, why do you price things after?
I always
because honestly, I'm a coffee addict, and in San Francisco, you're not going to get a latte for less than $4 most places.
No way.
So $4 is kind of like so $1 a month difference. You're not going to care, right? No. And in fact, I would argue that a lot of people are going to walk away with a Note 8, V30, iPhone 10, or iPhone 8 Plus, or iPhone 8 even, or Pixel, or some what's the incentive for them to buy 7X? Right. If they are tech savvy, early adopters, and super budget sensitive, they'll know to go to Best Buy or online and buy $200.
My thing is, I think OnePlus understands their market, right? They understand that the people that are buying their phones are people that are enthusiasts. That's why you can only buy OnePlus phones on the OnePlus website. So it's like they're kind of pandering to their own market there, but there's no reason to make a super budget phone that you're going to sell at a carrier store or Best Buy, because like you said, people don't care. They just see how much do I have to pay every month. And if they just see it whatever, I only have to pay $10 a month.
Right.
So I told them, they don't care that the phone's $1,000.
I still see that. I said, who in the US, first of all, nobody's going to buy the Mate 10 Pro, right? Because you don't sell it yet.
Yeah.
And then I said, but if you were, like you did last year with Mate 9, and there's rumors, I said, I'm not fishing, but I said there are rumors it's coming on AT&T. Sure. So I'm like, who's going to buy this phone, if you sell it unlocked? Yeah. And who's going to buy the 7X if you sell it unlocked? And the V10, View 10, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I said, it's the people who listen to our podcast. Right. These are the people who want a headphone jack. Yeah. You're shooting yourself in the foot by not having a headphone.
Other people don't even know about Huawei. So
of course, if they sell them in AT&T stores, that'll be a whole different ballgame because now they're putting it in the same basket.
Samsung phones.
I mean, potentially. Now they have a better chance to a person like we were just talking about paying for a latte a day for their phones. Right. I'm going to buy that phone, right? Potentially. So I don't know how they're going to differentiate in store, but already how it is in store. Did you ever see that story? Who wrote? Somebody at ZTE has been doing a series of articles of them going into wireless stores and seeing what they will get recommended.
Oh, really?
And it's surprisingly never the iPhone 10 right now.
I have talked to a lot of Verizon reps, and apparently they get extra money when they sell a Samsung phone.
There you go. So the reality is these people are not going to walk away with a Mate 10 Pro. Yeah. Sadly, because it's probably one of the best phones on the market today. Mm-hmm. Probably in the top 5 for me.
They're still recommending the S8 to people.
God.
So, yeah.
Well, look, I can understand the regular S8 for its size. Mm-hmm. To me, that's the closest in size to an iPhone 10. And it's comparable in terms of. So I can see that. The Note 10, the Note 8 is a freaking huge phone.
Yeah, it's big.
And the Mate 10 Pro is about the same size as OnePlus, a little smaller than a Pixel 2 XL. But yeah, I think there's something to be said about bringing back the headphone jack because of the market they're trying to enter. And I don't think they're willing to do that because they don't want to make a special SKU for the US. But they are in a way because they're doing the V10, right? The View 10.
Right.
So, but then again, is the View 10 is going to be sold by Honor, which is kind of considered or perceived as a discount brand.
Yeah.
For those who even know what it is, for those who even know it's Huawei. And again, we have this conversation with Huawei PR all the time, this. Yeah. And they're really good about it. They also feel it's a little weird.
Yeah.
Is what's the difference between Huawei and Honor, and why do these two brands exist? To me, Honor should be a line within the Huawei. Like it should be like it should be like the OnePlus within Huawei. Like it's like you get the best we can make for the money, and we cut out some stuff like waterproofing, NFC, or whatever.
It's like the Galaxy A line.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the premium budget or luxury affordable or whatever you want to call it. Because I don't think I've played with an Honor phone that sucked.
Yeah.
For their price at the time, they were always pretty competitive, and they're getting better all the time.
Yeah.
So the Honor 8 was really one of my favorites back then. The 6X last year, a little too cheap-ish for me in terms of features and experience. But I think the 7X,
Seems pretty good.
Yeah. Impressive.
The one thing for me that I didn't like so much was the screen. I felt
it's
like it was a little
dull.
It's a little, yeah.
It's like you look at it it's because we look at AMOLED flagship every day, right?
Yeah.
And you put it even next to the OnePlus, which is much cheaper than the others, and
it's brilliant screen on the
different.
5T.
Yeah, the 5T is just a whole different league.
Yeah.
So I think the display. It's not dull. How can I explain? It's the color. The colors are not as poppy, but not because of there's IPS that have poppy colors today, so it's not an AMOLED versus IPS thing because it's an IPS panel on 7X. It's more like
a lower quality panel.
Yeah. It's very bright though.
It does get bright,
and I think that's kind of it's kind of what makes it so dullish looking in color. In order to get that brightness, the colors are desaturated. So actually, if you turn the brightness down on it, it looks a lot better.
Yeah.
It seems like it does some kind of adaptive lighting adjustment. And I think color tuning is also... I haven't installed the latest software. I'm still running the original that they gave us because I read the instructions and I was like, I can totally do this, but it's never going to happen. Yeah. I don't have time to deal with it. I don't want to reinstall my apps because they couldn't guarantee me a factory reset or not. Did you try it?
I immediately gave it to Lon after I did some testing on it, and I did a lot of video of it, but then I gave it to Lon.
Just in case those who are listening are wondering what the hell we're talking about, the 7X review units we got have essentially, when you boot them up, they say this is a prototype kind of software on them. Yeah. So it's not final. It doesn't auto-update over the cloud. They gave us basically... Yeah. They gave us a bunch of zip files we can put an SD card to update, and I'm just too lazy. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I bet you that fix like color tuning. You can tell color tuning in that display is kind of an afterthought.
Yeah.
But camera tuning is surprisingly good. So I was like, wow, okay.
Maybe if it's cloud based.
So. We talked about headphone jacks, and I want to bring that back because, the podcast is now famous for my headphone jack rants. But you experienced something that I've experienced now that is a new thing that's got me very worried. During this trip in Hawaii, I've been using my Pixel 2 XL occasionally with a headset, like an analog 3.5 millimeter 4-prong, headphones with a mic inline for phone calls. I like to be hands-free and on calls with clients or whatever. And so I've used it with the Pixel adapter that comes in the box, and it's always worked okay. And this trip, I didn't take my V30, which has been my go-to music listening device, and I took the Pixel. But I don't think the Pixel dongle is the best that I have of all the dongles. And I don't have the Razer phone yet. By the way,
the Razer 24-bit dongle. It's
the best.
Very good.
But by the way, I'm still waiting for Razer reviewing it. They know, and they keep giving me the runabout. I don't know what's wrong with those folks. I've reviewed Nextbit thoroughly in the day. But the best one I have, other than the Razer one, which I don't have, is actually the Essential phones. It's actually a pretty good one too.
It's all braided and nice. Yeah,
I got it, I'm listening to on the plane. I'm listening on the way to Hawaii, and everything's working great. Like my Pixel 2 is playing music. It sounds good. I'm happy. And then some point during my trip in Hawaii, I don't know what happened.
Just stopped working.
It's not that it stopped working. Either dongle would be intermittent when plugged into my to my Pixel 2 XL, meaning that I would plug them in and sometimes I'd get audio, sometimes I wouldn't. And sometimes I'd get audio and then in the middle of a call or in the middle of listening, it would just cut out.
Yeah.
Or I would bump it and it would cut out. And at first I thought, oh, it's, I'm in Hawaii, it's pretty salty here, and the air is humid, maybe there's some dirt. So I blew on them, cleaned them up a little bit. I thought maybe it was the dongle, so I tried the Essential dongle for phone calls. Same problem.
Yeah.
So it's either the jack, the USB-C port on my phone, or some software bug or some weirdness. And I've heard other people. I did a quick Google search, and you have the same problem.
Yeah. It was actually worse though, because my phone just straight up won't recognize
the dongle.
The dongle. Yeah, it did it once, like when I first got it. And then I was just trying to listen to some music through some headphones in a coffee shop, and you plug it in, unplug it, plug it in. I tried restarting. I tried unplugging the headphones from the dongle and just like everything, and it just won't recognize the dongle at all.
Mine still gets recognized. It's just intermittent. So I'm worried because it charges fine.
Yeah.
With all the different chargers
same,
I have,
same.
so it's definitely. I don't think it's the connector.
Yeah.
But
it's either a software thing or the dongle goes bad really easily.
I think maybe it doesn't supply enough power to the dongle. That's what I'm thinking.
Interesting.
And so, if you have a little bit of dirt on the contacts,
it's not getting through the hole.
If it's just very, very brief intermittent, but it supplies enough power, it won't be noticeable. Like the resistance, the added resistance won't be noticeable.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. When I get home, because I've been on the road for a while, I'm going to use some WD-40 and some very thin. I have these super precision they're not Q-tips, they're not meant for your ears, but they're kind of like Q-tips, like cotton swabs. I'm going to clean the contacts on the connector on my Pixel. And I know it's not the dongles because I use them with a Mate 10 Pro after that, and they're flawless, both of them. So the dongles are fine, so it's not the dongles. Yeah. So it's the phone, and I really hope it's not the connector. I have another Pixel 2 XL review unit that they sent me when I complained to them about the burn-in that I never set up. So I have a backup. And I'm going to keep that phone around as a backup in case I drop it, whatever. But I can't believe that this phone is 3 months old. If it's the connector is starting to go, like, come on. This is the exact example as to why we need headphone jacks on our phones.
Yeah, mine was the first time I used the dongle is when it messed up. And it's like, I didn't get one good listening session out of it before it just didn't recognize it.
I did a bit of research, and some people say factory reset fixes all that.
I did that twice. No? Yeah, nope. Nothing.
Do you want to try my dongle when we're done the podcast?
Yeah, sure.
Just in case it could just be a dongle, actually.
Yeah, maybe.
Have you tried another dongle on it?
I haven't, no.
Okay. Well, Oh, as an aside, an interesting little dongle story for you. Like, we're getting like super nerdy here, okay? If you plug the non-Huawei dongle in the Mate 10 Pro, you get a little warning that you can dismiss to never come back that says, this is not a recognized USB-C or approved USB-C dongle.
Right, yeah. The same thing happens with the HTC one.
That's funny. So I thought, by the way, did your Mate 10 Pro come with a dongle? Mine didn't.
No, it didn't.
And they're going to send me one.
Okay.
Because I told them that on this call, and they're like, wait. He's like, it's supposed to come with it. I'm like,
I don't think the review units came with one.
And they said, we'll send you one. I was like, please, the more dongles, the better. Because here's my thing. Yeah. Now I have a bunch of what I call active or digital dongles, the ones that have the amp and the DAC in the dongle, which is the U11s, the Pixel 2s, the Essentials, and the Razors. And I'm going to test these and actually do like an article about sound quality. That's why I'm waiting for a Razer review unit. Hello, Razer PR.
Now that I think about it, I did use the dongle on my Surface Book because I have a Microsoft Surface Book and it has the worst headphone jack location.
Oh, it's terrible
of all time. They could have put it in the bottom right of the screen, but they put it in the top right. So it's
did it work?
It dangled. Yeah, there's a USB-C port in the
base.
Yeah, in the base, and I plugged it right in. And it works fine.
So it's something. I wonder if
I think it's a software thing, or I don't know.
It's look. This is stuff I'm talking about. Like,
it shouldn't have to be this issue.
No,
like
the Pixel 2 XL is my daily driver. I want it to be my daily driver primarily because the camera is so awesome.
Yeah.
It already pisses me off to no end every time I try to take a phone call when somebody calls and plug my headset and realize, oh right, I need the adapter, and then go dig for the adapter in my bag. And now I know that the adapter's not always going to work. This is freaking mission critical stuff, guys. I cannot deal with this. I can deal with burn-in on the screen and weird tinting that they fixed with the vivid mode.
Yeah.
But like, Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, seriously, Google, if you're
It just
listening.
shouldn't be a problem. Like, it shouldn't have to exist, you know?
I know. So here's another thing. Speaking of vivid, we've been talking about the Mate 10 Pro camera, and one of the differentiators is vivid for me as well. So the monochrome mode obviously is a big differentiator since the P9 for creative, but the vivid mode, which kind of emulates like Kodachrome slide film, like the colors are a little more saturated and a little more contrasty, is one of my favorite modes on the Huawei high-end phones. It's been there since the P9.
I haven't used it extensively, but I really am interested in using the Mate 10 as my daily driver for a while again, because I'm a very manual shooter and I use a Fujifilm camera, which they're very manual. Everything's tactile.
I have a Fujifilm X30 in my bag.
Oh, nice, nice.
I like it a lot.
Yeah, they're very tactile, and so like I would like to have those options there.
I love the manual controls on these cameras. The Fujis, they're pretty
great.
awesome.
Yeah.
So anyway, Vivid mode, try it out. It feels like the Velvia mode.
Oh, really?
On the Fujis.
Okay, interesting.
So that's why I dig it, and I like shooting in Velvia on the Fuji. I just like saturated colors when it's done right and it feels real. Like it feels like I'm using a chrome film, like a slide film.
I pretty much always use Astia. The soft one.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So there's a soft mode as well. I think they're the third one. So it's like standard, there's saturated and soft.
It's just a personal thing for me. I like slightly desaturated stuff. So
try it out.
Yeah.
Try it out.
Yeah. Maybe I'd like the Honor 7X.
you might be surprised.
Yeah, I always desaturate things a little bit in post-processing.
So we talked about a whole bunch of phones, mostly Huawei, because we're here in New York for the Huawei holiday party, and these are the most recent phones that I've received in my staple. I know a lot of people in the podcast are going to ask me about the Axon M I received. Wah, wah, wah. It's been in my bag, unstarted, since I left for Hawaii. And the reason for that is manifold. I have too many phones with me on this trip, and I really want to test them out, and I did. I also they didn't provide me a working SIM, which is no big deal. I have some AT&T SIMs, but right now they're used by phones that I want to test. So stay tuned for more on the Axon M. Have you played with it?
A lot.
Okay, so I want to hear from someone. I've only opened it up once.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It is really interesting.
Interesting is everybody's word.
Really interesting.
Fisher said the same thing.
Yeah.
What do you like and what do you not like?
Okay, I really like a lot of the stuff you can do with the two screens.
Okay.
It's basically the best emulator that you could buy. So if you want something to play like, Game Boy or like NES games or something, or like even like Game Boy Advance or like Nintendo, it's basically a Nintendo DS.
It's a DS. It totally feels like a DS.
And it feels like one too. It's great. Like if it had tactile buttons, that would be even better. But for emulators, it's the best. It's so cool. What they pitched is that you're like watching a video and you have it in tent mode and you're watching it across from the person across from you. Personally, I would prefer to just watch a video with someone next to me because it's a little more personal, The tactile click for when you open and close it, insanely satisfying.
I mean, the build quality on that thing, which they had to do, right? They couldn't get that wrong. That has to be solid. You can tell.
It's great.
Wow.
Really good.
The inside of the phone, just so you know, when I say the inside is if you unfold it and the displays are facing away from you both, it's all plastic, right? But it's well done plastic.
Yeah, it's got
but all the frame and the hinge and everything is all metal, and it's just like this funky, clicky goodness. Yeah.
What was it? You can force the extended mode on any app, so it's like built into the Axon.
Does it make the app behave okay though?
It works on every app except I've noticed Instagram forces it to be in portrait mode when you do that, which is really weird because then images are like cut in half and stuff. And then a few Reddit apps also force that for some reason when you do extended, because there's multiple modes you can do. There's extended where it goes through both displays as if it's one big display. Yeah. There's mirrored, which just shows the same thing, and then there's one that shows different content on each display. So the idea is like you can multitask, right? So if you're the type of person who likes to like watch/listen to YouTube while doing other stuff, you can have YouTube open on one panel and you can be like, drafting an email on the other panel. So that's pretty cool. You know, it basically, like, if you don't have YouTube Red and you want to play it in the background, you can do that. The things I don't like are the quality control of the screens is very, very bad. Michael Fisher had this issue. Josh's unit had this issue where the screen is very yellow and it's very warm. Michael Fisher's had one of the screens was like pretty yellow and then one of them was pretty good.
Yeah, I saw his review. I haven't really, because I haven't set mine up yet. The only time the display turns on, the second one is like during the little setup video that plays, you know. So I haven't been able to compare to white balance, but I bet you mine has it too. I think this is definitely like one of those things. Since
we were doing all this best of Android testing at this time, I took the time to take Josh's review unit and do some testing on it. And both his screens were insanely warm. It was warmer than daylight, which is, I've never seen a phone that is warmer than daylight.
Wow.
Yeah, the color temperature was insane. So they sent us a new unit, and that one was much better. Luckily, the quality was a lot better.
All they need to do is a software thing where it lets you tune both displays separately, and they're done. Like, then we don't have to calibrate them at factory. Forget it.
I don't know.
Let people calibrate them.
Yeah, it just seems like they didn't really take the time to calibrate them at the factory.
I mean, it'd be nice if they did it, but...
Yeah. So, but, I mean, besides that issue, I think it's a really interesting, innovative phone. Whether or not they're going to make a second gen or whether or not people are going to follow suit, I don't know. But, you know, Samsung is apparently coming out with a foldable phone pretty soon. And then there's...
Yeah, but we're talking about a flexible AMOLED panel that actually folds in the middle in some crazy way.
You could just you could fold it and put it in your pocket, right? So... That's what I'm more excited for, but I don't know how that's going to work.
Yeah, as a first-gen product, I have a feeling that's not going to end well. Like, they're going to have a lot of issues with wear and tear on that middle piece.
Well, they've shown that technology at CES every year for the last, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, and so has LG. But, you know,
so I think they're waiting until they can actually get it right before they, put it in a phone.
Yeah, but, to me, is it going to fold, with a round fold? Right. Or, a sharp fold?
I know. They've shown the round technology over and over again.
Round fold I can see.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it might be when it's, maybe if it's if it's the same form factor as the Axon M, essentially a laptop form factor, I can see it being an exaggerated version of the Surface Book when it's shot.
Right, how the hinge is kind of rounded.
The hinge is round. Yeah. And then how does that fit in your pocket? Yeah. And if it's a flip phone instead, which it might be because they might only sell it in Asia at first.
But they're still really.
Then I can see that, but then again, it's going to be a little thick in your pocket. It depends on the radius that they can achieve on that hinge. I mean, look, this is like pipe dream sci-fi stuff since we were kids. Yeah. I mean, we've been wanting this forever, right. So let's bring it on. Yeah. Well, I'm fascinated by the Axon M simply because it's a long time since I've had a ZTE phone to review. Mm-hmm. They never gave me an Axon 7 back in the day, which is really weird because at the time Ashley was there, and I think they just didn't have the supply or something. And by the time I really, they could get me one, I was just like, guys, it's been 6 months. So there's no point anymore. Yeah. I heard lots of great things about that phone. Obviously, today,
the 7 was good.
Today, it's no longer relevant, but
the front-firing speakers, and it was the form factor, and
it was well made, and overall was pretty good, like the OnePlus competitor, basically. Mm-hmm. But the M, I think, to me, what's got me interested, as you said, is all these extended mode and these other kind of what apps take advantage of it, and what could. I think Michael's video is really Michael Fisher's video is really the one to watch because I have a feeling I'm gonna feel the same about a lot of stuff he talks about.
I agree. I really liked his video because I thought he talked about aspects of the phone that you can do with it that a lot of people wouldn't think about. He's like, oh, you can use it as an emulator, you could use it as this, and you could do this. And not a lot of people in their reviews really talked about all these different things that.
So day to day, did you find that you ended up just using it as a normal bar phone shut, or did you feel like you did start getting into a habit of opening it up?
It's weird because the power button / fingerprint reader is on the left,
right?
And if you're right-handed, that's very strange. It uses the fingerprint reader is the power button on the side.
Right, that's right. I saw that.
You've got to use your index finger, and no one does that.
Right. So if you're left-handed, then it works. But and it won't flip the display if you hold it upside down.
No, and I felt very confused because as soon as you close the phone from being in the extended mode, you're basically holding it backwards, and so you've got it in an extended.
So the
mode.
hinge is on the wrong side,
basically,
right?
yeah.
Because it opens like a book in Arabic from the back,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And so when you close it from the extended display mode, you're holding it backwards, and the screen in front of you turns off, and it's very polarizing and confusing. And then you have to flip the phone over to actually use it.
Is the natural front the one with the camera or the one without the camera?
The one with the camera is on the front, yeah. So
that's the natural front.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's the also weird thing about that is, there's only a camera on one side, right?
Right.
So you have to, when you flip it to actually use the back camera, you have to turn the phone physically around because the camera is only it's like a selfie camera that is also a back camera. It's a 20 megapixel camera.
Right. So wait, why is there even a flip?
Why do you have to flip it around?
To flip the interface. Oh, you need to display it on the other display.
You have to flip the phone around completely because the camera is facing you.
Right.
Naturally. So that's the little things, right? Like, especially when you close the display from being in extended mode and then all of a sudden the screen in front of you shuts off and you're like, wait, what happened? And then you realize that the screen on the back is the right one. And it's like, it just feels like this phone is backwards.
And so what's interesting is when I unboxed it, and even the few times I showed it to people without having it set up, just like, look, the little demo running on the second screen and the setup screen on the other, isn't it cool? I couldn't figure out, like, unless, when the demo is running, it's clear. But when it was in my hands turned off, I was like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Like when I unboxed it, I was like, I said, I think this is the front. No, I think this is the back.
Right.
And then I was like, because of the positioning of the buttons, I was like, no, I think this is the other way around. But then I was like, but the camera's in the front. Oh,
yeah.
Anyway,
it just feels like it's a little bit backwards.
It's
it's
a good second attempt, and I say second because there was the Echo, the Kyocera Echo, which is a total disaster from Sprint. I mean, look, Kyocera and Sprint have had a long time relationship, and Kyocera has been doing some interesting phones over the years. Yeah. They were the first to do a bone conduction front-facing earpiece speaker, which the original Mi Mix had, and the Mi Mix 2 dropped for good reason. It's not that great.
Yeah, it's not very good.
But the thing is, gotta give them props for that. And at the time, the Echo was an interesting attempt to something that Android. You think Android is not ready for dual screens today? Can you imagine when it was like whatever Eclair or Jelly Bean or whatever? Yeah. Oh God, it was.
I give props to ZTE for trying something new. That was their whole marketing campaign.
It's too bad it's AT&T only.
I know.
Why not sell this unlocked as well?
I think they needed the partnership.
Yeah, because it's so weird.
Yeah.
And props to AT&T for trying something different.
Yeah. AT&T's always running after innovation. They're always trying to find the next big thing. So I'm glad that ZTE at least tried to change the game, and I think a third generation might be really interesting.
How's the camera on that thing? Is it worse than a OnePlus 5T?
It's not terrible, but it's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's probably falls apart.
The low light is really bad. Yeah.
But ZTE, doesn't really have that much camera chops. I've never heard anybody say, "Oh yeah, buy a ZTE phone for the camera."
Right.
You don't even hear that about Honor, but then again,
you don't hear that about a lot.
You do hear buy a Huawei P10 or Mate 9 or Mate 10.
Yeah, it's Google, Huawei, and Samsung usually.
It's starting to
maybe
get,
LG.
and Apple, obviously.
Oh yeah.
LG's kind of the forgotten stepchild. Yeah. I feel like LG is getting the raw end of the deal all the time.
They always have, right?
Because they're a giant player in the biz, yet they always play second fiddle to Samsung for sure, because they're both Korean companies. Yeah. But I always feel like even Huawei is like, LG who? What? And I guess if you look at the numbers of phones Huawei sells in the world, you get it.
I freaking love the V30 though.
Oh, the V30.
It's so light.
The perfect form factor.
It's so light. It's got such small bezels. It's got all the bells and whistles you want. It's got the DAC, the headphone jack.
Oh, the DAC, the
wide angle camera. It's like, damn. Like this phone is
Why
amazing.
didn't you make that the Pixel 2 XL?
I know. God, I think
keep the hardware the same.
What I heard was that
too expensive to make.
Well, remember when they were gonna have 3 pixels?
Yeah. And HTC is gonna be the U11 Plus, right? The third one.
Oh, was it that one?
I thought it was going to be the U11 Plus. Yeah.
I would have, yeah, I guess that would have been good too. But the V30, if that was a Pixel, oh my God, I would be just all over it. So
what are folks of the ROM world out there? Why can't that be done? Like, I don't get it. Both Snapdragon 835, if the bootloader can be unlocked, why can't you burn the Pixel 2 ROM on that thing?
Might be able to. I don't know.
Because the camera, I mean, we know now that the original Pixel camera has been extracted as an APK on APK Mirror and XDA forums, and I've used that as my kind of like, I want better HDR camera on the OnePlus 5T and on the Essential. Oh, it's made a huge difference to the Essential.
The Essential phone's gotten way better.
Oh, it's gotten way better. But I have to say that the Pixel camera on the Essential is a magic combo.
Yeah.
I'm not getting that much benefit from the Pixel camera on the OnePlus 5T, especially now with the latest software update, to be honest.
Interesting.
But it's only a matter of time till the Pixel 2 camera gets made into a separate APK for newer phones.
Well, kind of talking about the Pixel cam, they just enabled the visual core.
Oh, they finally did?
I think they enabled it in the third developer preview.
Huh.
But people were not seeing that big of a difference.
Not in the release preview, the release version. No,
yeah. So I think what that is there for is
speed.
Like it's speed, and then it's also future proofing. Because they need, once they gather a ton of information, it's gonna they're gonna need to do more processing, and so I was kind of hoping to see a bigger boost, but the camera's already so good. It's like, what can you really do?
Totally.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, listen, we should probably wrap it up. It's been an hour and 11 minutes. You got a little bit more than last week. Last week was a bit of a short podcast. I think we ended at 58 minutes. I try to always do between 1 and 1:15.
Yeah.
We should probably wrap it up. But listen, this was really great.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you came on. I hope you come on again.
Yeah, sure. We're usually in the same
I know.
places.
We could. I'll probably do it over Skype anyway, just for convenience. But what was I going to say? Plug yourself. Tell people where they can find you online, what your handle is on Twitter, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I am David Imel on Twitter, so DURVIMEL. I wanted David Imel, but it was taken, and then when I got verified, they shut down his account, but they won't give it to me. Because it's this account that was used once in like 2013 and then never used again, and they shut it down, but they won't.
You forgot you were drunk that one night.
Maybe. But yeah, so DURVIMEL on Twitter. On Instagram, I'm just David Imel. That's just my name. If you want to email me, david.imel@androidauthority.com. I think that's all the social stuff.
Yeah,
right?
and of course,
that's all the social stuff I care about.
Find David's stuff on Android Authority.
Yeah.
You don't do just videos. You actually write stories.
I do both.
So read. Yeah. I'll link to some of your stuff.
Most of the stuff you'll find on there is going to be either reviews or long form narrative.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Opinion pieces. Woohoo.
I know.
All right. So, you know where to find David. You know where to find me. I'm at TNKGRL on Twitter. It's Tank Girl without the vowel. You know where to find me on YouTube as well. That's where you'll find some videos that match all these products we've been discussing. And that's Miriam Jouar on YouTube. That's my full name spelled out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the podcast. Tell your friends about it. mobiletechpodcast.com. You know where to find me, and tell everybody, and we'll see you next week.
All
Thanks,
right.
David.
Yeah, no problem.
Bye-bye, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.